Hello, my beautiful light beings. Welcome back to the Magic Exists podcast with Dani Margot. I have a wonderful guest here. Her name is Alisa. She is a former type A boss lady turned Western herbalist. She's also a certified career and life coach, meditation guide, and astrology and human design enthusiast. She works with individuals and groups to share the power of healing the body and spirit naturally and how to connect to your body's innate ability to heal. Her mission is to empower others with accessible knowledge and practices to experience their most vibrant, healthy, and joyful life. Welcome, Alisa.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay. So the first question I love to ask all my guests is, what is your strongest clair and how does that manifest in your life?
Yeah, I don't know if it fits exactly into a clair. I want to say clairvoyance, but I like to receive messages through writing. And a lot of the times when I connect, I see like words, like a story. It's like a mix between clairaudience and clairvoyance because it's hearing, but it's also seeing the words.
Oftentimes, clairs will manifest in like several different ways, and like typically someone will have maybe a couple and they're like not super strong, but then as they like grow and expand them, they're kind of like intertwined. And I've said this before where it's like my strongest was clairvoyance, but then there would be just like a little image, and then claircognizance would kick in and I would just know what the image meant. So it's kind of like using all those tools to navigate.
Yes, yes, I definitely feel the intertwined, but my comfort zone is words and writing.
Beautiful. Yes. So let's talk a little bit about herbalism and vitality. And I absolutely love tea. I drink tea every morning. Like, I don't drink coffee, and not because I don't like it. Like, I love coffee. I just feel like the caffeine is so strong, and I'm already like a very high energetic person that it gets me through the roof and I get like anxious. So, tea is like my sweet spot. Like, in the morning, I'll maybe have black or green, and then throughout the day, I'll have like some herbs that friends have made. I love lemon balm. I love mugru. I love like so many beautiful ones. But tell us all the wonderful things.
Yeah, I mean, where to begin? I feel like I wasn't even much of a tea drinker until I really discovered herbalism. I kind of thought like every tea tasted the same, or I just didn't read about teas, or I'd see one that was like apple cinnamon and that would draw me in because that'd be really sweet. But I've always been a coffee drinker and I still am. But now that I understand the power of herbs and like all the nuances, um, and the ability to hone in on exactly what you need when you need it, now I drink tea all the time. I usually change the mix of herbs every week or couple weeks, depending on various things, how I'm feeling, where I'm at in my cycle, emotionally, energetically, where I'm at. So it's very fun to sit down and sit with, okay, what do I need this week? And I can make a little blend for myself that I have. But I will say right now, I'm just overwhelmed with life. And so I went to the grocery store and bought a mango ginger, one of the regular brands. And it's just so delicious. And sometimes you just need the one you can take out of the box and have ready in 10 minutes. And it just tastes good and make you happy.
So I want to talk about how you're in Mexico right now and you just moved from Hermosa Beach. But before that, if a beginner is listening to this and wants to get into tea, like how would someone navigate that? Because I met you through an herbalist class and I took your class and it was so cool because you were saying how a lot of modern medicine stems from the herbs. And actually like that's where the foundation of a lot of Western medicine comes from. But they kind of took it to a point where, it's like it's instantaneous where herbs I think are like over a month or something, like you were saying you're switching it over and stuff. Like, can you expand a little bit about that?
I think if somebody just wants to start exploring, let's say, alternatives to maybe they're looking at, the Tylenol that they have in their cabinet, or the low energy that they have, sort of some of these low stake things that we all kind of experience in our life. I mean, the internet is an amazing place to just say herbal alternatives for headaches, or herbal alternatives for energy or sleep, relaxation, just kind of all these sort of day-to-day things. And you'll find a lot. And I would say there will always be one because there are many herbs that have the same action. So meaning they have the same kind of reaction in the body, they have the same kind of outcomes. There will probably be one that you know. So you mentioned lemon balm, and so if you searched herbs for sleep, there'd probably be a ton you never heard of, and lemon balm would be on there. So saying, okay, I'm going to start by using this lemon balm in a really intentional way. And if you're going to use it for sleep, sitting down at 8 p.m. after dinner and really sitting with that tea and starting to tune into exactly how it feels in the body, what subtle shifts you notice as you sip your cup of tea, and then really pay attention to how that transitions into your night's sleep, and just start to tune in to like the subtle energies of the teas that you already have. Because we all have had tea and we probably just thought it tasted good, but it all has a medicinal value. So once you start tuning into that, it allows kind of that energy to work in the body.
So you mentioned something about how tea can like attune us to like our vital energy. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah. Every being is different. We all know this. And everybody has a different energetic makeup. So this can be seen through so many different lenses today. One that comes to mind that people might be familiar with is Ayurveda with the doshas. So having like a different energy type, those are also associated with elements. So if we're talking about, let's just say, the Pitta dosha, if you're not familiar with it, it is ruled by the element of fire. Like that's the most dominant energy in that type of person. So you might intuitively know this about yourself if you're very high energy all the time, or you're super passionate about everything that you do, and you have a kind of an affinity or a tendency to burn yourself out because you just want to go, 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 go. You like to do CrossFit and go to cycle class. So that kind of person, if they're looking to tune into their own vitality and use herbs, they want to look for herbs that are going to balance out the most dominant energies in themselves. So if you have a lot of fire, you have a lot of passion, and you have this tendency to sort of burn out or go too hard, you're going to want to look for herbs that are cooling for the physical body, things that will be very grounding, things that will nourish the nervous system, that will kind of slow you down. Whereas like somebody who's the opposite of that, who has more of an affinity to moving slowly and just going with the pace of a day and can't really find the energy or the motivation to, do what they need to do that day, they are going to want to look for more warming herbs, things that are spicy and pungent and stimulating. So it's really about knowing yourself really deeply, and then finding kind of the herbs to pair it with, which if you're an herb nerd like myself, you can go and research it, or that's a great place where like an herbalist can step in and help you kind of craft an herbal protocol to balance your energy.
I love that. I have a good question just for myself. Like, I have teas that were made that have like several different herbs in it, and it just like tastes so, wonderful and nourishing. And then there's teas that, just like my lemon balm, for example, which is like the one. Is there a benefit to taking like an assortment of teas, or is there like a time frame in which you should take the teas? Because you mentioned something about like 2 to 3 weeks, you rotate them.
Yeah. Oh, it's so personalized. I think this is where it's amazing to have an herbalist in your life, because when you go and look for like a sleepy tea, for example, or if you're really trying to, even you can get supplements. So the same way you get your vitamins in a multivitamin, you can go and find an herbal blend for sleep, let's say. And if you look at it, it probably has 5 to 10 different herbs in it. And it's almost like, okay, we're going to sort of put everything that we know, all the sleep herbs that we know in this formula, and one of them is going to work. Whereas a lot of the times, finding the 1 to 3 herbs that are most attuned to you, that are going to be most powerful, is going to sometimes be more potent. I used to be the person that put like 20 herbs in a blend, and now I try to really hone in on 3 max, but sometimes I really just think, okay, what's the best? Usually 2, right? Because there is kind of harmony between herbs, but something like lemon balm that has so many different actions and is just all around great is a perfect one to take just on its own. I would say it doesn't hurt. That's the great thing about herbs. The contraindications are not very high, so they're usually very safe. But if you can like really find those ones that you connect with, I would say less is more. And then in terms of length of time, typically the point of herbs is to balance the body, right? And to be able to then have this balanced state where you don't need as much support. So the intention is to take an herb usually for 2 to 3 months, like if it's working on something that's a little bit more chronic, and then stop and see how your body is now. And you want your body to be able to work without the herbs. But for me, switching like week to week is usually more for my cycle. So as women, we have hormonal changes every week that are very intense. So a lot of the times I focus on that just because right now that's something that it's kind of a priority for me. And just to also see how different herbs can relieve symptoms and just balance things out for myself.
Oh my gosh, I love that. It kind of sounds like you can't really go wrong with herbs in general. Like as long as you kind of do a little research and are intentional with like the 1 or 2 or 3 that you're like using for that month or 2. Ideally, there's like benefits. Are there any specific ones that you recommend? I want to hear about cycle and like sleep. And then what's your favorite tea?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I'm going to start with my favorite tea because everybody can go out and buy this today. My favorite tea is throat coat.
Mine too. I love
I
that one.
absolutely love it. And it's so delicious. And then I first started drinking it when I was taking voice lessons. And then as I had actually just started herb school at that time. And so then I was going through my boxes of herbs and seeing like what was I already taking without knowing it. And it has licorice root in it, which does not taste like licorice, by the way. Licorice candy is actually flavored with fennel. So, fun fact. But licorice root is an herb that is similar to stevia. It has a super, super high like sweetness. Yeah, just basically it's a kind of like another 0-calorie sweetener like Splenda. But it's also an amazing herb. It's an adaptogen. It's a nervine, so it really like calms the body. It can lower blood sugar, which may or may not be good for people, but it has so many benefits and it tastes delicious. Like I love it. So I would say my herb that I can always have is anything with licorice root. And I absolutely love ginger so much. Like when I think about if I was an herb, I would be ginger. So, and I love fennel too. That's another one of my faves. And those are all like, you can find them at any time and they're just super accessible and super nourishing.
Wonderful. You were saying something about an adaptogenic. And so, from my understanding, if you take a tea for an adaptogenic, it's like helping nourish your nervous system, right? I think that's the class I took from you. It was like nourishing your nervous system or something.
Yes. Adaptogens, they work on the endocrine system actually, but like to make it simple, what they do is they basically increase your systems, your body's ability to handle stressful situations, and stress in general. So stress can be work, can be life things. It can also be toxins in your water or in the air. And it can be exercise, all these different vectors of stress. So adaptogens are amazing because they basically make us more resilient and over time. So that would be one where personally I took a lot of adaptogens at the beginning of this year for almost 6 months. And I just started taking them again because it's been one of those years that just has a lot of stress, good and bad. And so yeah, they're to me like something that probably every single human, unless you're living off the grid, probably needs in their life.
Yeah, like for me, tea is kind of like a preventative care. Like I feel like I know it's nourishing my body, but also when I drink it, it's this like sense of like warmth. And I want to talk a little bit about how like why our current health system is stacked against us and like wants us to be sick. Because from my understanding in the Western medicine, it's like a lot of medicine that is like for instant relief or instant or just symptom relief and not actual like root cause, where I'm assuming where tea like addresses like root cause issues to heal not only the root, but maybe also symptoms.
Yeah. Well, I am not an expert in this topic. I only have my opinions and other podcasts that I've personally listened to, but I think we can all feel it in general, like in society right now. Our health, or the US spends most on healthcare of any other country in the world, and we're also the sickest country in the world, and we're getting sicker and sicker. Heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancer, childhood obesity, like all of these things are going up exponentially. And so it's quite obvious there's a disconnect. I think the other fact that's really hard is that med school students usually get about like 2 to 4 hours of nutrition training. And when you think about the foundation of our health is like what we're putting in our body, it's not the doctor's fault, right? Because they're just not trained to view health in that way. But, our system is run by pharmaceutical companies and big businesses that want to make a profit and sell drugs. That's why it's stacked against us. But I also think the other thing is that we don't encourage people to connect with their own body. Like health is instilled in us as something that we outsource. Like something feels weird, we go to the doctor and we just trust anything that they say versus learning how to listen to our own body and harnessing our own health, right? I don't know when that happened. It seems so weird to me that it's like one of these things that we're just not supposed to know. Like, no. Doctors know about health and bodies. I don't have to know that. And it's like, you're living in it and you have the best intuition and knowledge about what you need. So yeah, I'm very passionate about this because I do think people could save so much time, so much money, and so much like emotional and physical pain by understanding their own body and how to help themselves. And nobody can really tell you that. I think that's the hardest part is that people want to listen to a podcast or read a book or go to a doctor that just tells them exactly how they're supposed to feel and what to do. Ultimately, it's like this constant exploration of how do I handle stress? Or what does my body tend to do? What is my body like? What is it not like? How much do I need to rest? Like all of these things are so personal and they take time to connect to.
I love that perspective because, and this is my intention for this podcast, to just really bring awareness and spread awareness around these topics. I used to be that way, like this illness I have, from the doctor, like, what do I do? Like, it's like, you're so scared, you're in fear because you're told this like diagnosis. And then it's like, okay, like there's nothing I can do about it. And it's like, it's so disempowering. And I think that's about the medical system. The one thing that really like it's stuck with me, like that disempowerment. And so I've been like navigating all these holistic things for preventative care, for empowerment, and now I feel so empowered. Now I know, like, if I get sick or if I get in an injury, like my angels have me, I'm supported, and I can heal myself. Like I can figure it out. I trust myself enough that whether it's just self-love or herbs or energy healing, that I can like heal myself.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is people have very narrow scopes. Again, I don't think any of this is wrong. Like I think it's amazing that certain people want to become heart surgeons and anesthesiologists and chiropractors and like all these different specializations. But if we could be in a place where each one saw the value of the other and it wasn't just I had an experience with a chiropractor. I know that they're all different, but it was very much that every single thing that I felt that was uncomfortable could be solved by cracking my back. And I actually had really terrible back pain and it didn't get better. And I kept going because they said like, oh, it's because, it's not straight enough yet and this and that. And then I ended up moving out of the city that I was living in. and it essentially went away. And I realized I didn't want to live there. I was trying so hard to get out of there. And the moment that I did, like, it released. And that the book Healing Back Pain, I don't know if you've read that, but it just is amazing. And it talks so much about, energy and pain being stored in the body. And yeah, so if we could look at health from this lens of every specialty has its place, and it's important to keep the scope broad and understand when people need different modalities. And I think that was what really drew me into herbalism, is even though it sounds specific because it's herbs, but the practice of herbalism is mind, body, spirit. So a lot of people that I talk to and work with, I love to make them a tea no matter what, because I just love to do that. It's fun. But usually the protocols are much more on, food and make nutrients and lifestyle changes and things like that. I think that that's the biggest thing, is realizing like we have everything we need, we can heal ourselves.
I do want to reiterate, I think it's a balance of Western and Eastern medicine. Like I have so many doctors and nurse practitioners in my circle, and they're doing like God's work. Like it's amazing. Like it's so needed. But I think, yeah, what you're saying, like widening our scope, like why can't you have both? Why can't there be balance with both? And you mentioned something about moving, and I want to talk a little bit about your nomadic life, because I just think it's so cool. I know it's like I'm moving into the unconventional world of from the 9 to 5 to this like entrepreneurship, running my own business. And it's so like you're such an expander for me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, you just like left Hermosa and then you moved to Mexico, and you're like, oh yeah, I lived in Mexico 5 years before too. I was like, wait, what? That's so cool. Can you tell us a little bit about it and your journey?
Yeah. I love to storytell, so I'm trying to like condense. But the short version is I'm a Sagittarius rising, so in astrology, I feel that my outward persona in life is just very much the Sagittarian explorer, globalist, lifelong learner. So I've always felt this need to go and explore and live in new places. But in January of 2020, I was basically burning out in my job so badly. I remember crying in the parking lot of one of my customers and being like, I cannot do this another day. And I went on a trip to Mexico for my friend's wedding. She got married in Oaxaca City, and she recommended I go to this little beach town before. And I put my feet in the sand there, and it was like I have chills like thinking about that moment, because it just was this knowing like this place is going to be so special to me, and I've never been here before, but I'm coming back. And during that trip, I basically decided like I have to quit my job. I can't live like this anymore. My health was going down the drain. I didn't even recognize myself. So I said, okay, I'm going to quit at the end of my fiscal year, because I was in sales. So July 2020, I'm going to quit. I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to go to Colombia. I'm going to learn Spanish. I just had this whole plan. And then the pandemic happened, and I kind of just lost the plan. Like it just went away, and, it was just surviving the pandemic like everybody. It was, I guess, December of 2020, and I was moving apartments in LA. And as I was moving, I found the Airbnb key that I guess I had accidentally packed the Airbnb key from this town in Mexico. So
What's the town called?
Puerto Escondido. So it's in the state of Oaxaca, so far south. And I found the Airbnb key, and I just instantly was like, I have to go.
Oh my God, that was a sign from your guides.
Was. And then add on top of that I moved into this apartment, and there was like construction that began outside my window, and it was horrible, like day after day. So I said, screw it. I'm just going to go for like a couple weeks. So I went, and I just kept extending. And I just knew I couldn't live like I've been living anymore. I came back, I put all my things in storage, got out of my apartment. I had quit my job, and I moved back there indefinitely. And I just had like a dark night of the soul, while also like having so much radiance and joy. It was very much a dichotomy. So it was like a very spiritual, finding myself, uncovering all these things. It was such an amazing healing place for me. But I ended up coming back and wanting to like try again in the 3D matrix, and got a corporate job again. And I think within probably 60 days, I realized this still isn't me. So then I went into kind of a journey of exploration while also keeping my job. And yeah, I found, well, I'm back in Mexico now because of a new relationship, which is very exciting, or almost a year, I guess, into the relationship. But it's just funny that this is where we found each other, and that's a whole other story. But this is the place that we decided to be together because he's not from the US. And so we had to have kind of a place that we could have a normal relationship. So I'm happy to be back in Mexico.
That's beautiful. So if anyone, I feel like a lot of people have that desire to like quit their jobs and do something else. But oftentimes, like some of my coaching clients, they have this like fear or distrust within themselves. How are you able to like in-source this trust that you're like, I'm gonna quit my job, I'm going to put all my stuff in storage, and I'm just going to live in a place where I don't know anyone? Like, were you able to make friends? Were you able to make community? Like, how do you find that like trust? Because obviously you were like so in bliss, and of course doing the inner work and the shadow work, but like so in bliss when you went there.
You know, maybe I do have the clear knowing, or what is it called?
Claircognizance.
Cognizance. Because I do feel it was one of those things where I just knew I couldn't not. Like, I knew I didn't have a choice in the matter, really. And I was just meant to be there. But in terms of, you know, taking that leap, I feel the first time I was really fortunate because I had been working in tech sales for a few years. And so I was able to save a lot of money. So I didn't feel that financial burden of like, oh, how am I going to make this work? I knew I had many months before I would have to think about that. So that was such a feeling of freedom. I mean, obviously, I paid the price for it by burning myself out for 5 years. This time it was different. I didn't really have that safety, but the knowing is that there are, even though I think there's a feeling of scarcity, like in the job market right now, and, you know, in the economy, there is always a way. Like, there's always a job. Like, I have an amazing exercise that I would recommend. It's Tim Ferriss who originally, I guess, created it. And it's called fear setting. And I did this exercise before I quit my job. And it essentially writing all of your fears that you have associated with this thing, and then writing a plan. So, you know, you have a fear that you're going to end up completely out of money and with, you know, living on the street. And then you realize, once you start writing it down, you realize how many layers of things have to happen before that fear takes place, and how empowered you are to change direction at any of those times and any of those phases. And I do believe that we have this idea that like any choice we make is so life altering and has to be perfect. But the important thing is making the next right choice and knowing that you can always make another choice. So when I moved here, because it didn't feel the same as when I went to Puerto Escondido, like I felt more cautious. I felt more unsure about leaving Hermosa. And I just thought, like, I know this is the next right decision, and I have to stop trying to predict all the things that will happen after I move. And if it turns out that it was a terrible idea, I can make a new choice.
I love that. That is so empowering. And that is often something that I feel like some of my coaching clients have, that fear, that overarching fear. And I've never heard that practice before, but I love it because because you have like this deep rooted fear, right? But then when you make a plan, it's like, oh, wait, actually, like I've always taken care of myself. I've like actually never failed. Unless you have, then that's something else to explore, you know, but I've always had resources. I've always had like a roof over my head. Yeah, wait, I am safe. Like I can make that next decision. And that's just, it's so beautiful.
Yeah. Usually there's only evidence of the positive, right? Like we only have evidence that we have always found a way. We've always found a way to make money or have a roof over our head or get over something difficult. And yet we just spend all our time worrying about the fear, the fear around the thing that hasn't happened yet, which I definitely do. Like fear is like a predominant emotion in my life. So I feel that I have to work through that every day, but it hasn't stopped me, which I'm proud of.
Which is so beautiful. All right. So during your moving process and all the things, what herbs do you think were like the most supported and supportive for your lifestyle as you transitioned? And then I want to ask you also about like cycle syncing and what you recommend if someone wants to move into that.
Okay. So in my move, I had a new herb that came into my life, and you can get it. Well, now the internet's amazing, so you can Google and find tinctures, which is like a liquid form of herbs. I focused on energetics, so like emotionally what I needed, and I was recommended mimosa flower from my herbal teacher. We were having conversation, just popped into her head, and then we read the energetics of it, and it talks about like moving through transitions and keeping a positive outlook and processing change. So mimosa was amazing transition energetic herb.
I
Um,
take mimosa antiphylactically when I eat raw fish to prevent from parasites. Is that correct?
ooh, I don't know. So
My,
yeah,
yeah. My energy chiropractor recommended that to me. Like, I don't know, I just do that now.
wow. Is it like a tincture form
No,
or?
it's just it's like a supplement. And so, because I had some parasites like back when I was seeing him back in 2020, and it was like kind of a rough like 3 to 6 months, and we just did it like naturally. And because he mentioned that like if you were to go to a doctor and test for parasites, when they finally test it, it's at the point that it's like pretty severe. So he was able to test for it through energetics or bioenergetics that I had it, and then he gave me that supplement. I think I was on it for like maybe 6 weeks.
Mhm.
And then when he tested me when I came back, like it had gone through or whatever. So now he's like, just take it when you eat sushi, raw sushi. I was like, okay. So I've been doing it and I haven't had any issues since. So I'm
So
curious.
it's mimosa.
Mm-hmm.
That is so cool. Yeah. I mean, this is why people use different herbs in so many different ways. Like I did that. So very cool and great thing to know for me as well, because in Mexico, like parasites are a lot more common. So I
Mm-hmm.
might just start looking into that more. So yeah, energetically, I use that a lot for my move, as well as rose in a tincture form and also homeopathic form, which is a whole other conversation. And then for the physical, I love eleuthero. It is an adaptogen. It's a bit more stimulating. It's also called Siberian ginseng. It's not ginseng, but it has that name. It was used in, okay, I'm trying to remember this exactly. The Russian space, like their equivalent of NASA, I guess, like to keep the workers like mentally clear.
That's cool.
And so it's like this, to me, it has a very masculine energy, which sometimes can be intense, but it's like super empowering herb. Taking it in the morning. So I've been taking it in the morning, and then I've been balancing it out with a little bit of that licorice root to give it like a bit more sweetness. And the flavor of sweet is actually very grounding. So, I think that's also why we like crave sweets sometimes when we're stressed. So balancing that like masculine eleuthero energy with a little bit of sweetness feels like a little hug. Were my moving herbs.
Beautiful. In terms of like tinctures versus herbs, so like herbs you drink in a tea, like you steep hot water, it like expands into the tea and then you drink it. And then a tincture, I think it's like a little drop on your tongue.
Yeah, a tincture is just the herbs soaked in alcohol basically, or you can do like a glycerin if you don't want to have alcohol, but so it slowly extracts all the compounds from the herbs. So you let it sit there for up to like 6 weeks, and then strain it, and you have this really concentrated, yeah, basically herbal remedy. And it's great for convenience. They're also very potent. So, I think it depends. Like if people really need to slow down, and that's kind of part of the protocol, tea is amazing. And if they like tea and that ritual, but if they're always on the go or the compliance is difficult, tinctures are amazing.
So when you were saying it sits for 6 weeks, that's if you make it yourself. right?
Yes.
But then if it comes in a bottle, like it's just ready to go on your tongue or
Yep.
wherever you put it. Okay.
And they last for years as long as you keep them, in a cupboard. So good investment.
That's amazing. Okay, so in terms of cycle, what do you recommend for like each phase?
There's a lot of popular herbs out there that people have. I can think of chasteberry, or Vitex, you might see, is in a lot of like women's health supplements and cycle syncing like blends. But what I have learned through my studies is that these herbs, like popular cycle syncing, hormonal balancing herbs, have an affinity towards one. Okay, typically, if you have a hormone imbalance, you either have high progesterone or low progesterone, for example. And there's a lot of symptoms that coincide with both that will help guide you to which one it is, and then pick the right herb for that. Chasteberry, for example, is not the right hormone balancing herb for everyone. So I just want to say that first, that when you go out and look for like a hormone balancing supplement, it's usually, you should really, if you're really, really serious about it and you really want to find something for you, talk to a doctor, naturopath, herbalist. But an amazing herb for women's health in general, I would say, is raspberry leaf. There's been a lot of women that have just taken that for like when they want to get pregnant or balance hormones, or I've even heard of it like after miscarriage to help like revitalize the uterus. And so that's an amazing herb for every woman. And then the second half of cycle, I'll focus on that because everyone sort of has similar patterns there where your hormones are like, oh, they're all rising. You might start feeling all these crazy symptoms. And really, what you can support your body in doing is detoxing like excess hormones or storage of water. We get bloated. And so, my favorite detox herbs for the second half of your cycle are burdock, which you can probably find, and the other one is nettle. So, burdock, nettle, or lastly, cleavers. So, these three are amazing. So, order them in bulk and have them on hand. And the beautiful thing is with the nettle and the cleavers, they're also very mineral rich. So they'll replenish a lot of like the minerals and nutrients that you need in the second half of your cycle. So those are some great ones.
Okay, so from an herbalist perspective, tea bags have plastic, right? And there's been this whole thing about like when you put it in boiling water, you're like drinking the plastic. How do you recommend we navigate that? Like, do we just have to buy the herbs, or there's certain different teas that you can get that don't use that, I guess, plastic? I know you mentioned throat coat earlier, and I don't remember the brand, but like I just like, I'm kind of like, oh well, I'm just gonna drink it, like I'm sure the benefits are better than whatever bag it's in. But I do try to use a strainer, with loose leaf tea as much as possible.
Mm.
But what's like your recommendation for us lay people?
I actually hadn't really thought about that. I'm in this like intense detox phase from plastics and cookware. And like I even started using a French press so that I don't have like plastic and coffee maker. However, I hadn't really thought about the tea bags. I actually don't know. There could be brands. I'm guessing some of the more high quality brands or like boutique teas probably use like, materials that are food safe. But I also love getting loose leaf teas, and I would say don't be afraid of them. Like I think they just seem inconvenient, but you just can buy a little, the little metal things. I also just got an amazing kettle that has a metal tea thing in the center. So now I can make a big batch of tea with loose leaf and put it in the fridge and reheat it every night. So there's lots of ways, but I also think we have a lot more highly toxic things that we can detox before our tea bags.
I agree. I'm sure there are some. I saw something on like Instagram, but what I did is I didn't have a dishwasher for like 5 years. And so I do now. So it's super helpful. I can like just put the strainer in there. But when I didn't, it's like starts to get black, and it's just kind of annoying to wash. Like when I drink like tea, like all day, I'm like washing all day. It's like, okay, this is like kind of a lot. So what I did was I went onto Amazon they have these like paper biodegradable, like compostable little tea bags with like a string. And so when I'm like on the go or something, I'll just like put my herbs, my loose leaf in there and then just like throw it in and it feels good.
Yeah, that is amazing. What are you drinking right now? What's your favorite teas?
I love lemon balm. It's the best. Ever since your workshop, and I have a lot of mixtures. So one of my clients has this black tea that's like anti-inflammatory. I don't know what else is in there. I'll have to look, but I have a lot of like different teas with different things in it that I don't know everything that's in there, but I'm like just trusting the source.
I think when something really tastes good too, you know that you need it. I feel like there's sometimes I have a tea like holy basil or tulsi is such a strong flavor. And sometimes I'm like, oh, this tastes amazing. And then other days I'm like, this is not what I want right now. And so I do feel like you get drawn to the flavors that end up balancing you and that your body is craving.
Interesting. Okay. Because I'm thinking of mugwort right now.
Or
And that one's a little earthy. And the first time I drank it, like I felt called to it and I was like, ooh, it's a different flavor. But then I think after drinking it over time, I'm like, ooh, this is so good. And like what's coming through right now is like, ooh, maybe like putting licorice fruit with it to like sweeten it.
be amazing.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
actually drinking, I have been drinking that because I have been drinking like a moon tea and it has mugwort in it. And it also has licorice root. So it's nicely balanced.
Okay, cool. I just channeled that. Cool. That was amazing.
Yeah. And that's would be a great one for, I can see that herb being so good for you because it's such a dream herb. And it's like a psychic herb. So I'm
Yes.
not surprised
Ex
at you.
exactly. I took this herbalist class during my astral projection like course like a year ago, and she went into all like the herbs and like the essences. So like this is like the witchy essence, right? So like they taught us how to like meditate with the tea and connect to the energy of the tea. And she goes into like details of like some that are like toxic that can kill you, but like are really good to be in their auras. But it was really cool to see it from like the energetic standpoint. And ever since then, I was like, I'm sold on the smug root. It's so good.
That sounds like an amazing course.
So, are there any offerings that you want to share with my followers?
Yeah. Well, I'm finally settled to my new home. So I have pretty much been exclusively working with people online. So now that I'm in Mexico, it doesn't really change anything besides maybe the energy that I would bring to the container. But I work with people one-on-one. And I almost like to think about working with an herbalist as a mix between working with a health practitioner and a coach, life coach, because it is this relationship over time where it's really a deep dive into, your personal health, your personal lifestyle, what you want out of life, and like what makes you feel vital. What does vitality mean to you? And then creating that roadmap of how to get there and then how to stay there through all of the craziness of life. So I work with people one-on-one. I also do events like the event that you came to. I've done them online. So I've done like little corporate events where we've done tea tastings and I've mailed things out. So if anyone's interested in offerings like that, and then you can find my Instagram at The Balanced Herbalist, where I just post lots of fun things and things about herbs. And yeah, that's me.
I love all your content. I'm so excited to dive deeper into all these herbs, and I think I'm going to make some tea right now.
I'll make a cup of tea now.